Hey everybody, Jacqueline here. Today's video I wanted to do a paint with me. Last week's video I did a really fun cottagecore video, which was very fun to film. I hope you liked that. But while we were there, there was this beautiful scene of the lake and the light coming through the trees and this cute little cabin, and I thought it'd be perfect to do a little mini painting. I'm going to be painting on this 1 by 2 inch little paper here. I like to paint really small. If you've seen that on my channel or on my website as well. But you paint whatever size you want. You do not have to paint itty bitty like this. So surround yourself with your art supplies. It can be colored pencils, watercolor. I'm going to be doing acrylic gouache paints. That's my favorite medium to do in studio. But if you do paint along with me, I'd love to see what you paint. So if you want to tag me on Instagram, DM me on Instagram, please chat with me. Tell me what you've painted. I'd love to see your style. We all do different styles, so it'd be really fun to see what you do as well. And then if you do like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up so we can reach more people. That would be super duper awesome. And if you love videos like this or any other future art related video, go ahead and give it a subscribe. But I think I'm going to prep my space. Some people do candles, but I love to do Palo Santo. I'm just going to do a little bit. That's like my favorite smell. Have you done Palo Santo before? It's really fun. Let's stick it right over here and let that just create my space, and we're going to get started painting. So let's go, guys. Okay, now we are set up with all of our paints and the little paper that I have here. So the first thing I like to do is sketch, do a nice light little sketch. So it's more like guidelines. I'm not sketching in every detail, especially since I'm painting so tiny. I don't need to spend any more time sketching that because I will paint those details. So we're going to go ahead and kind of find where that lake horizon line is. Roughly, I don't know, 1/5 of 4th the way up the page. I'll lightly sketch that in. Right here to the right is where that little jutting out island is happening. And it does not have to be super precise. I don't even know if you can see this on the screen. Totally okay. Then up here's where the green trees come down to there, and then there's, as you see in the image, in the scene, I'm gonna add a little more sky. I just have off to the left here, I have my laptop and I just have like a screenshot of it. So I'm gonna make the mountain down just a little bit. Because I like to have a little bit more sky. So again, when you're doing these things, you just kind of add whatever your heart desires. Because as you're painting, no one else is really gonna see the image that you're using it from. That's good enough. And then we do know that the little house will go over here. We're gonna make a little rectangle so I don't cover it up with too much paint. Okay, set that over there. All right, now the colors I see in the scene are towards the top. I'm going to go with like light blues, dark blues for the mountain. Not going to put a lot of detail in there because this is such a tiny painting. I want it to recede, so being able to put lighter colors to make things push back in the background is a good tip to do. And then I'll have the different greens in here. The top of the green, because it's like more springtime, will be a little more neon-y green. Cute little house. You can feel free to paint whatever color you want. I think I'm going to stick to that kind of turquoisey blue rooftop and then the brown. And like over here, it's very yellowy green. And then I guess I should sketch just a line to know where I'm going to put this big tall tree. Right there, that works. And then the lake is definitely more brown green. I think I'm going to switch that a little because I think that would look not so pretty. It'll look more swampy. I think I'm going to stick to a more bluish color, but we'll get to that. So to begin, we are going to get all our colors on our palette. So we're going to do a little white. I currently have this Winsor & Newton zinc white gouache. Once I run out, I'm probably going to get a really big tube of it, because I like using that one. And for the sky, I love using my Misty Blue. I like my Holbein acrylic gouaches. Definitely my favorite paints for acrylic gouache. Just a little bit, because it's such a tiny sky. So we're going to start with that. Let's add some water to the white. My white's a little starting to dry out towards the end. I'll grab some of that white and lighten this up even more. And then with the paint here, or the tape, I'm going to make sure I press just a little bit right on the edge. Not too much pressure. I don't want it to be too tight. So when I peel it off, sometimes it can pull the paper up, but a trick I have is I take this, before I put it on the paper, I put it on the back of my hand to help get rid of a little bit of that stickiness. But by doing so, sometimes the edge will pop up. So I make this a little watery consistency, and we're just gonna go in right into the sky. So with my skies, I haven't really gotten into painting like clouds as much. Maybe a teensy bit, like with my little paintings, but I tend to just keep it a nice solid color, or... Sorry, I'm not great at talking and painting at the same time. I'll try to be better at that. Or I'll do more of a gradient. I'd love to know what type of skies you do, and do you even paint this tiny? Maybe your paintings are much larger, but I thought, one, I love painting tiny, and two, for the sake of this video not being hours long, I thought painting tiny would be perfect to do for today's video. But I'd love to know what size you're doing. Oops. And what it looks like. So if you want to tag me on Instagram or DM me or something, I'd be honored to see what you created and what your style is with this. That'd just be super cool. I don't need green yet. So we're going to go in with the mountain as a nice darker blue. I'm going to mix it with that sky blue there, just to make it a little darker. And I might even lighten up the sky a little bit more once I get this in. So the nice thing about using these angled brushes is the tip. I can kind of use it like you would a small round or paintbrush, but it works really nicely to kind of hold some more paint in there. But use just the tip for the edges. So when I do this, I like to go in with the edges first and then fill in the rest. Now with some of my mountain paintings, I would leave little white bits to show that there's kind of like snow on it, but this one does not have that. So I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and fill it in. This is a bit more watered down than I usually do. So I'll let it dry and then I'll come back in with another layer. Just a little darker, but not too dark. Actually, I kind of like the sky like that. So next I'm going to mix up some of the greens for this nice hill of trees happening. The nice thing with this tiny painting is you don't need a lot of actual paint. Now, you could mix your own greens, but sometimes for these little ones, the sap green works perfectly as a base. And then I'll go in and I'll have this lighter yellow, this mustard yellow, and then I have this deep yellow. to get different shades of green. Because as you see in nature, it is not always all just one beautiful green color. So I'm going to start by laying down just a base of this green. I'm going to add a tinge of blue to my first layer so that it's harmonious with kind of like the blue in the mountain. We're gonna just lay down the first base color. I'm gonna get as close as I can to the ridge up there, but I will go in with a tinier painting to add in the little jetting trees that you see. So something I also try to do when I'm painting valleys, or like here with the whole mountain full of trees, I try to kind of do the paintbrush in the same motion that these trees are kind of going. It kind of helps when you can get that motion going, and when you're adding in your other colors. So we're going to take some of this green, some of this yellow to make a brighter green. And I'm going to, right here about halfway is where the greens kind of are a little bit brighter. Which again, I'll go in and add more detail with it, but it's a good base to put. I try not to, with my tiny paintings, unless it's for snow, have any of the paper showing. Such a tiny little piece that I want to make sure it looks really clean. So add some interest. I left these parts white, but now I'm going in with the lighter green. That's a little bit brighter over here. I'm going to leave that little rectangle spot where the house will go, and then once I get it in there with the shape, I'll go in with the greens to fill around it. That is a good base. Just two colors. And now I'm going to do the base of that island of green. That's very, very bright. Probably going to stick to this over here. Add a little bit of green. Oops, might have been too much. Let's come down here. Add more yellow. There we go. It was such a beautiful morning when we were filming this, so I just love how the sun hit. So that's a perfect base. Just a more brighter green. I will come back in with more layers as we go. So now for the water, I think I'm going to stick with, I didn't really leave a lot of blue, did I? Let's start with the little base of the light blue. Oh, I'm just going to have to get more. Try not to squeeze too much. I don't want to waste too much paint. Sometimes when, actually not most time, sometimes when I'm painting tiny, I'll have another one down here, or maybe more, so I can use up all the paint palette. So if you are painting really tiny, I suggest doing something like that so you don't waste all your paints. Unless you have like a stay wet palette, where you can save your paints that way. I have a makeshift stay wet palette, but today I wanted to just use my ceramic palette to make it cute for you. Get it nice and close. Again, even if you're painting a bigger painting, adding in just this first base layers of all your sections of color is a good idea. And then you can go back in and add in all your little details. Or get closer to edges. That's a perfect little base, and it's only taken us like 10 plus minutes to do. Okay. So I think I'm gonna go into the trees back here, and I'm going to use my little spotter brush. I'm gonna go in with the greens, this little mixture over here. Another thing you can do if you're using like a ceramic plate or palette is you can spritz all of these. I'm moving quickly, so they're all staying pretty wet for me. So let's go in, just start getting all those little details. I'm going in first where the darker mountain is, so you don't see them as much, but it gets my hand used to kind of painting and dabbing in these little ones. So once I come up here where the lighter sky is, I kind of have like a little bit of practice. I try to do that, especially like later when I have like this big tree I'm going to paint. If I was doing a scene that had like lots of trees, I would start on the outsides where maybe it's a little darker or a little more, just off to the side, to get a little practice in. You can also separately have a piece of paper, like a scrap piece of paper off to the side to kind of practice on too, or mix your colors. I sometimes will do that as well. Because these trees are so far in the distance, it's more like I'm just dotting these little lines. But adds a little bit of interest to the background. And then when you look at the scene, there's a little bit of darker trees kind of happening right in here. And you can make this as detailed or not as detailed as you want. I try to keep more detailed stuff towards the front. So everything kind of in this bottom third, I'm going to have a little more detailed than the ones back here. Might even grab some of this green color, start dabbing it in. And also sometimes when you have the color like on your paintbrush, you can kind of bounce around your painting so you're not constantly cleaning your brush in between each thing. So I kind of work in layers, as you saw when I put the base colors down. But now that I'm doing details, I'm looking back at the image and the scene and kind of just layering it up. Sorry, I'm probably going to go silent sometimes. And also you can always take liberty in how you want to paint certain things. Again, when I used to teach at a paint and sip studio, there'd be a class of like 30 to 50 people that I was teaching paintings, and I would have to like remind them to be like, okay, so you see like 30 plus other people's paintings all around you. But when you go home and you hang this up on your wall, it's just your painting that you're seeing. So you're gonna like be really happy with it when you get home if you're like unsatisfied right now. And we'd have repeat customers come back and they were just like, yeah, you're right. Like all my paintings on my wall are so good. They like completely forget about other people. So don't feel like when you're painting along with me, yours needs to look exactly like mine. We all have different styles. And I love seeing that and embracing everybody's wonderful painting styles that they bring to this. You could paint this huge, you could take this scene and do more of like a abstract, like just pulling colors from it because you're like, oh, I love these paint, the paint colors, what's it called? The palette colors, whatever, happening, that this is what I want to paint with. So I'm kind of just dabbing in like there's the tops of the trees. Such a warm spring morning. So fun. Dab some over here. Perfect. Probably just gonna go into this. I realize this back corner I wanna not be so transparent. Looks like that first layer I put up in that corner is a bit too light. There we go. I just kind of want to darken it up. Just a tinge. I'll bring some of this color into here. Perfect. So when I'm painting like tree trunks, tree branches, I want this to be a little bit more liquidy. And then here on the ferrule part, the metal part, I make sure I wipe off any excess water, because you'd hate to be painting and then as you're like painting a tiny detail, a water droplet like blobs onto your beautiful painting. So wipe that off as best you can. And then for the trees, I like to start at the bottom and work my way up with a nice light touch. Make sure this is still in frame. So with a very light touch, kind of do something like that. A little bit lighter towards the top. And then I can kind of fill in the base. Easy peasy with like a little triangle, that's the word. And then you can kind of taper off the sides. Perfect. And then I'm going to kind of vary all these branches so it gives a place to land when I add in all the leaves to it. I like to start towards the bottom where it's like a little bit thicker of these branches so I can kind of get used to it, just kind of like I did with the trees here. Get your hand kind of used to painting these little lines. And then once you get to the top, you can go a little lighter and a little more sparse with them. Perfect. So we're going to kind of let that dry briefly before I come back in with the greens. And I think while that's drying, I'm going to move over here to the tiny house. So let me grab, I think I'm going to add a little bit of this peacock blue. Just a little bit of this turquoise. Just a smidgen. And I'm going to use this one to mix it with. I try not to mix with when I'm getting tiny, I try not to mix with my tiny ones because then there's like a lot of paint on it that you have to like wash off. So I'm going to mix it with this one. We're going to go more white. Teeny tiny dot of that. And then so it's not so bright, we're going to bring in some of this blue. Might have been too much blue. Bring this back into it. Oh, that's looking pretty. Then we're going to lighten it a tinge. Yes, perfect. And you could even do like a cute little red roof to it if you wanted to. I wanted to try to do this blue color because I think it's quite pretty. And then we'll use some of this brown down here for the rest of the house. Okay, so I'm going to go in with my really itty bitty paintbrush. This is also a spotter, but the size 20/0 versus the 5/0. Put a little water on it. Again, wiping off the excess. Coat those bristles, but not too much. Start with the roof. And it kind of comes at an angle. And on the right side there, I will fill in with like more, it looks like it's darker, like trees kind of receding behind it. So I will paint that in after it dries. Now for this particular house, it looks like it's covered by a tree, but I'm going to go ahead and paint this part. Just paint the left side. See if we can get a triangle kind of happening. I might even bring this over. Yeah. underneath that. Such a tiny little thing. Then we're gonna go in with this brown color. I think I want it to be a little bit more with the reddish burnt sienna color. More so than the dark, dark brown. Perfect. I'll grab this color lightly. It's a little more watery. There we go. That works. And we're going to paint in where the door is. Perfect. Probably have to go back in a little lighter. These little windows there. We're just going to kind of paint in the roof there. Sorry if I'm just mumbling. Perfect. We're going to let that dry. We'll add in the green around it. And I was going to add a little bit of yellow to it, like the lights are on or something. Okay, now we're going to move back over to this tree. And we're going to switch over to this small spotter. We're going to start adding in the leaves. Okay, so I'm going to start stippling, which is this little dabs on the branches, around those little branches, on the trunk as well, so it looks like some of the leaves, are coming towards you. You don't want to see a perfectly leafless tree branch. So this lighter color I'm going to try to keep to where like the tops and the edges of them are, and then I'll go in with a darker color too. Just little tiny dots up here. Then we'll go in with just a little bit darker. Mix it over here. And kind of go underneath those lighter ones you just did. So it just creates a little bit of depth. Now if you were painting this as a much larger painting, then you'd probably want to do lots of varying colors for your trees. But with a tinier one, you can kind of get away with just doing light and dark and maybe a nice medium color. Perfect. And then while we're over here, we're gonna add in the shadow that is happening under the tree. I think I'll stick with more of the sepia color. A little bit of green. And then we're just going to create that shadow and the dappled light. So you could use a small brush, or in this case I'm just going to use the tip of this angled, this is a little angular shader, 1/8 size. And we're just going to kind of dapple the light in. Both sides. Perfect. Maybe a little over here, because it looks like there's some trees off to the right. Fill in that spot. Beautiful. So just little shadowed, dappled light. Also, while we're over here, I'm going to, on this island right here, just add in little blades of tiny grass. So usually I'd flick like this, but I'll show you where I'm going to put it. But then you probably won't see me do that. Just to give a little bit more interest to this little island. That's something I like to do with my paintings towards the bottom, like if there wasn't this lake here and it was just land, it was like an island, it was a pathway. I like to just add little bits of blades of grass, and then also like flowers. So if you wanted to, you could make a cute little like pink color and just dapple it in there, and it's like, oh, the pink blooms are coming. And then while we're doing this tiny bit, I'm going to dip into this brighter color. So over by the house, there's some more of this brighter color. Dabble that in to the little shoreline. And then it's a little bit darker around the house. Yeah. There's some trees over here. And that helps that house kind of like, you know, nestle into this little cove. So I kind of did those tops of those trees, and then I'm going to kind of just fill in the bottom a little bit. I might add little tiny tree trunks right there. Seems like they're a little bit lighter. Just add those ones in there. Perfect. Then I wanted to add some of this yellow. The lights are on. Now I kind of messed up my door just a little bit. So I think I'm gonna have to paint that back in. Some of the browns kind of pushed together. So I'm just gonna go in with white. Just paint that door. Perfect. Now my water, I did a bit too close to the little house. So we are going to bring back the driveway, it looks like, with a little bit of grass in the front. Paint that right in here. Perfect. And bring the grass back and kind of create a new little horizon line. The nice thing about painting with gouache is you can just layer right over it. Voila! Now so it doesn't just look like a straight green line that I created. Let's just add a little bit of like, oh, there's bushes there, or something. Kind of make it seem like I meant to do that in the beginning. So I'm going to do some of the final little touches right here at the end while you do your final touches. So now we get to do the fun part of peeling the tape off. This is always like my favorite part. I think a lot of artists like to do the paint peeling. It's just very satisfying to see those edges. Oh, it looks so cool. Oh my gosh, look at our tiny painting, guys. Okay, so something that happens, I'll show you a little closer, is sometimes the paint will seep through where the tape was. One, you can leave it as is, totally fine if you want to do that. Sometimes I like to take an X-Acto knife, and I just lightly scrape right along that edge. I don't want to do it too hard because I don't want to like really rip up the paper. Sometimes you'll get a little paper off, and then you can use like a brush to kind of wipe away those little itty bitty tiny bits. But it helps just kind of clean the edge up a smidgen. I don't do it for every single little spot, but like that one seemed a little bit big. There's this little guy right here. Sometimes you can erase it just by scraping it away, or at least blending it a little bit more. So that's just a little thing I tried to do with my little paintings to make it feel a bit more polished. But it is an original painting, so there's going to be things like that happen. Okay. And voila! We have our final little painting. Oh my gosh, you guys! We did it! We finished it! Oh, I am very pleased with this little tiny painting. I love my little itty bitty cabin. Oh my gosh. It's pretty cute. I'd love to see your painting. Like I had said at the beginning of the video, if you want to tag me on Instagram or DM me, I'd love to see what you did. I think that would be so fun. This YouTube community has just brought a lot of joy into my life of chatting with you all. So I want to take it another step and see your paintings. Let's see it together. But yeah, if you want to give it a thumbs up so this reaches more people, or even give it a subscribe, or comment below what your favorite part of the painting process is for you. Just let's chat. I think that would be really fun. But I'm gonna clean up now, and I'll see you guys in the next one, guys. Cheers.